Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over a recent upgrade I did to my rear two subwoofers. But first, a quick recap of their history. My initial build plans called for a cavity to be built under the stairs to house the two subwoofers and center channel speaker behind the projector screen. As this is a multi-use basement theater area, I didn't want the subwoofers taking up any space on the floor. The cavity was built and the two SVS PB1000 PRO Subwoofers were installed into the cavity. I initially had the drivers pointed in the same direction, but after playing around with them a little bit and doing some measurements in the Room EQ Wizard, they had a much better response with the drivers facing each other inside of the cavity. These two subwoofers each had their own Panamax surge protected outlet that was wired to an on and off switch so they could be turned off remotely if needed. And they received their signal through the SVS SoundPath RCA cables, which then ran into a mini DSP 2x4 HD. You can see my REW video of just these two subwoofers in this cavity and how I got a really nice house curve set up with them. Then I decided to change things up completely and add four 18-inch subwoofers to this front cavity and move these two SVS subs to the back of the room behind my row of seating using the SVS SoundPath Wireless Adapters, as I did not pre-wire the rear wall with RCA cables for subwoofers to be used back there. I utilized two of these wireless adapters, one for each subwoofer, so that they would still be on their own output channel and could be controlled individually from each other with the mini DSP for EQ and time alignment purposes. The transmitters were hooked up inside of the cavity using the same SVS RCA cables with an RCA to 3.5mm adapter, since the transmitters require a 3.5mm input. The subs were moved to the back of the room along with the two Panamax surge protected outlets, and the wireless receivers were attached and hooked up to the SVS subs. Okay, now that we're all caught up, let me tell you about a few things. The SVS SoundPath wireless adapters did work and did their job as they were supposed to. I was able to incorporate the rear subs using Room EQ Wizard with the front four subs, set up a nice house curve, and get them all playing really nicely together. The problem I experienced with the wireless adapters was that I would hear a popping noise intermittently when the audio would stop playing or a quiet scene would come on. It was almost as if the transmitters were turning off and there was a slight pop heard from the subwoofer itself until the next time it needed to play. It also wasn't consistent and didn't always make the noise either, but it was enough for me not to be completely happy with it, so I contacted SVS and asked for some advice. I played around with moving both the transmitters and receivers to different positions, but nothing really seemed to work or get it to stop completely. At this time, I was actually out of my 45-day trial period with the wireless transmitters, but thanks to SVS's superior customer service, they took them back for a full refund anyway. So long story short, it was time to figure out how to get RCA cables to the back of the room to eliminate this issue. My plan was to fish two separate 50-foot lengths of RCA cable from the rear wall to the front wall where the AV rack is located. In the middle of the rear wall is a speaker channel block that I have 3 runs of speaker cable going to for future bass shaker installs. The fourth, very bottom speaker connections are not being used, so I will cut those out for the RCA cables to come through. Then, hopefully I can fish up the rear wall with a fish tool to somewhere in this general area, where I will then be able to attach the RCA cables to the fish tool and pull it back down the wall to the speaker block connection. I started by pulling the speaker block connection apart and removing the very bottom set of speaker terminal connections to allow room for the RCA cables to come through. After the terminals were removed, I drilled some holes to open things up more, and I had to finish everything with a knife to remove sharp edges and smooth things out. After confirming there was enough room for the RCA cables to come through, it was time for a little bit of cleanup. I had drilled a hole in the back of the wire box, thinking I would use it for the RCA cables to come through. But because there's a cement wall behind this wall, it was too sharp of an angle to get the fish tools to work, so I ended up going through the upper left hole of the box that only has one speaker cable coming through it. Finally, after multiple attempts, I was able to get the fish tool fully extended behind the rear wall and up to the soffit area that I had access to. It took a little while to find the end of the tool because of all the insulation. I was hoping it was a little closer to the projector box, but after checking what I could reach from that side and not being able to find it, I decided I'd have to remove the right rear Atmos speaker for better access into the soffit area. After the speaker was removed and I checked the very next stud space by slightly pushing the insulation down, I saw the end of the fish tool right away. I attached both of the RCA cables using some electrical tape to the fish tool and prepared to pull it down behind the rear wall to the speaker terminal block. While that sounds easy, it did get stuck several times, but after finessing it, I eventually got it pulled all the way down and into the block. The hardest part was now over. What you see here is one end of the cable going down to the block that's behind the rear wall, and the other end of the RC cable is pulled through to the front of the projector box as it is getting ready to get pulled through the PVC pipe that runs through the soffits and into the AV rack area. Just like before, both ends of the RC cable are attached with electrical tape to the string that I left inside of the PVC pipe. I also attached a new string to get pulled through with the RCA cables, so I'd still have a string for anything else down the road that needs to get pulled through the PVC pipe. I then went to the opposite end of the PVC pipe that's inside of the AV rack and pulled the string until the RCA cables pulled all the way through to the AV rack area. This is the view as the cables make their way from the bottom of the rear wall, behind the rear wall, up to the inside of the soffits, and then into the PVC pipe that takes them the rest of the way to the AV rack. Here is the PVC pipe as it looks inside of the soffits. I'm so glad I opted to install this pipe during the construction phase, as it truly made this portion of this install super easy. I didn't realize I'd be utilizing it this early on, but it sure did come in handy and was worth every penny. So to wrap this video up, these two RCA cables plug into the mini DSP with the other two cables that go to the 4 18-inch subs up front. I can already tell a huge difference when it comes to bass quality from the rear SVS subs now that they are hardwired. There is no more popping or weird noises at all, and it's just accurate, clean bass all the time now. I know SVS makes the tri-band wireless adapters, and I thought about giving those a try instead, but they were even more money and I didn't want to risk it. I also was going to use their SoundPath RCA cables for this install, but their customer service rep reminded me that they were not in-wall rated. So I found these 50-foot RCA cables on Amazon from Monoprice, which are in-wall rated. There's a link in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Like and comment below if you have any questions for me. And my last piece of advice, pre-wire, pre-wire, pre-wire. You never know if or when you might need it in the future. We'll see you in the next one.